Welcome. This is Leah Bales with Creating Sanctuary. Today's topic is creating sanctuary with self-discipline. Now, I want to admit right up, discipline has not been one of my very favorite words. It's not one I have thought of all that positively for a lot of my life because I think it brings to mind thoughts of punitive measures and punishment and rules, rigorous rules that somebody else comes up with. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is loving creative self-discipline. And when I started this series on creating sanctuary, this was not one of the things I was thinking about including. And yet it's become really obvious to me that it's a very important part of creating sanctuary. Several times over the last few weeks, I've had it come up in private sessions with clients. And the first time it did, we were talking about, it just kind of popped up, self-discipline. And I explained it to me in that situation as meaning the loving guidelines that help you create and maintain what you really want. So that's how we're going to be thinking of it. Loving, supportive guidelines that you use for yourself that help support you in what you're wanting to create in your life, in your work, in your family, in your relationships. So thinking of that in terms of these times right now, as I'm beginning this series, we're in the COVID-19 pandemic, we're in the spring of 2020. And I really am thinking a lot about how each of us naturally seeks sanctuary, whether we call it that or not. It's a natural urge, it's an impulse, it's an instinct to create sanctuary in both forms of the way of thinking of it, in the sense of sacredness. We have a natural longing to be in the sacred, whether we have a faith tradition, whether we're religious or not, the sacredness, that time out of time, that which is special and very, very important and holy to you, whether again you think of that as religious or not, what is truly sacred to you. We all have a need, an instinct to have ourselves immersed in that. So that's the first way of thinking about sanctuary. And the second is safety. We need haven, we need refuge, we need to feel safe. And both of those are especially apparent when, like right now, the world around us seems frightening. We're not sure what's going to happen. We have less sense of being able to predict what's going to happen. People are getting sick and some people are dying and we're grieving and we're worried and scared. Those things are happening around us. So we have even more need and desire and instinct to seek sanctuary in the sacredness, in safety. And when we do that, we can do it skillfully in a way that's really healthy for us. Or if we're not conscious of it, we might fall back on habits that we automatically fall into when we're wanting to feel more safe, when we're wanting to feel more holy. And so thinking about those is a really important part of creating sanctuary. When the world feels scary, we take refuge in our habits, even when those habits are destructive. So we can begin more than ever realizing how important it is to be kindly aware, bringing that kind awareness and to consciously choose. So when we're bringing kind, creative self-discipline, we're beginning to notice, what are the ways that I habitually try to feel safe? So for many of us, we try to feel safe with things like, and we often don't even realize. So part of it is realizing, oh, kindly noticing, I don't feel as safe. I have a higher level of anxiety. I have some fear. That's okay. Noticing that, feeling it, breathing with it, and then noticing what are your go-to methods of dealing with it. And like for many of us, you may have had now or in your past go-to methods for dealing with anxiety and fear that may not be very positive for you. Many of us overeat, or we eat the wrong foods, or we overspend. We spend on things that we're not really going to be happy with, or we spend more money than truly is good for us at that moment or at that time to spend. Some people overindulge in being critical or spend a lot of time with controlling thoughts or blame. Those are patterns of habits of thinking, patterns of thinking we can get into. Many people obsessively watch the news, or I would sometimes obsessively read novels to escape. Not necessarily bad, but noticing how it affects us. Some people overuse alcohol or drugs or cigarettes, sex. You know, some people use that not for perhaps its most wonderful purposes, but for just escaping or not feeling. So noticing for yourself, what are your go-to habits when you feel a little scared, when you feel a lot scared, and how are they really affecting you? I spent several years with bulimia. And I would purge and I would overeat. And I had several years as a teenager with that. And looking back on it, of course, I can realize it was trying to feel safe, trying to control things. And it was not good for me. It was not a healthy way to do it, but it was part of that instinctual need to be safe. I've also gotten into overspending. I've gotten myself in trouble from spending more than made sense or more that really even made me happy. So all of us have those things. It's not a shame to notice that you may be tending to fall back on habits that are self-destructive, but just to notice really kindly. I think all of us have the tendency, the ability to get addicted. All of us have the ability to get over attached to things that are not good for us, but it comes from that need and that desire that actually is a positive thing, a need to escape some of the reality around us and find a sacred center, the need to feel more safe, to feel like we're in control. And so if you begin noticing what some of your habits are, your habits of thinking, your habits of action, when you're feeling unsafe, when you're feeling scared, when you want safety, begin noticing those and noticing how they really serve you. Food is a great one because we all need to eat, we need to be nourished. And yet many of us have had or do have in our lives habits of eating when we're feeling kind of nervous or anxious or scared that make things worse. For instance, I've noticed myself, even though it's been a long time since I've been bulimic, a long time since I've had what I called an eating disorder. I notice under more of the anxiety recently, I'll feel like eating more sugar. Again, eating sugar isn't morally bad, and you need to notice how it feels to you. When I eat more sugar, I feel more anxious. When I eat more sugar, I don't sleep as well. My weight might go up, which I'm not happy about. So noticing for yourself if the foods you're eating for comfort, if the way you're trying to make yourself feel safe with food is helping or not. We tend to reach for, when we're feeling anxious, we tend to reach for things that give us a spike in serotonin, the neurotransmitter. Sugar, simple carbohydrates are sort of the go-to food for a lot of people when they feel bad. And it makes us feel immediately maybe a little better, a little lift in the feel-good chemicals, and then a plunge. There's that sense of being more tired, more depressed, more worried. It kind of gets into that cycle. So one just hint for that particular thing is some of the foods that will raise your serotonin level and keep it higher, like crunchy vegetables. Your body and your nervous system like to have that crunch. So if you have cold, crunchy vegetables, raw vegetables or lightly cooked vegetables, those will help you raise your serotonin levels for a longer period of time. So that's just a simple thing you can notice, that you have this instinctual need to have perhaps more of that feel-good chemical, and a more skillful way, a way that actually is going to help you more to be able to feed that. The other food that can be helpful for snacks when you're feeling that way is to make sure you've got a combination of protein, fat, and complex carb. So like an apple with almond butter is one of my favorite things. and you get some of the surge of serotonin, but not such a spike. And it keeps it going for a longer time. And you're actually nourishing your system so that you're stronger and more fortified. Another really simple thing to notice right now, especially, is how your consumption of news is affecting you. Now, different people are different. Some people say, I never watch the news. I don't pay any attention to it. I don't read it. It's not good for me. That works for you. It's okay. Other people say they have the news on 24/7, or at least all the time they're awake. And as soon as they wake up, they're checking to see what's going on around the world and what's happening right now in the middle of this pandemic. That would drive me crazy. Even thinking of that makes my nervous system feel really, really rattled. I know for myself, I have to have, this is where discipline comes. I need to have loving guidelines that I put into place and that I keep around the news consumption. And for me, one of those guidelines is don't watch the news, listen to the news, read the news when I first get up, because there's that compulsion. You're like, turn on something, turn on a device, see what's happened overnight. That isn't good for me. I need to get up, I need to breathe, I need to move around, I need to meditate, I need to write. For my rule, my loving guideline for myself is an hour of that deeply nourishing inner work, connecting with that sanctuary, that sacred space inside myself before I read the news. And for me also, I don't watch it on television. If I watch it and I'm visual, I get more agitated. The best consumption for me, my self-discipline, is to read it on a source that I feel good about, that I feel is informative and balanced, and to give myself half an hour. Sometimes lately it stretches to a little more, but the idea is for me, that amount in the morning after I've done my more inner nourishing things, then I can read that and then go and do my other work. So again, there's not a guideline that works for everyone, but notice for you, how much news consumption is really good for you? How much do you need to be able to know what's going on and to be able to make good decisions for yourself and the world? And how much is too much and just is becoming a pollutant, a toxin to you? Noticing that, and what are the guidelines in both of these areas? In food, what are the loving guidelines in news consumption? In any area of your life that will help you create what you really want. So I think we're always, when we're in a situation where there's anxiety and fear and turmoil and chaos around us, or just even in our personal life, we're always seeking sanctuary. And we can seek what might become negative sanctuary or positive sanctuary. And so to me, negative sanctuary is closing off, pulling in, turning inside and away, and spiraling down in my thoughts and in my habits. And in a sanctuary where I either feel like I'm locked away and I'm lonely and not connected, or where I just feel like it becomes a downward spiral, more and more negativity. To me, that would be like a closing off in a negative way, and not what I'm talking about with creating sanctuary. Positive sanctuary, sanctuary that is life affirming, is going to, as you do it, feel nourishing and peaceful and enlivening. Your nervous system is going to feel calmed. You're going to have that feeling, to me, it's like of coming home to your heart, coming home to your body, coming home to your inner essence. And when you emerge from this sort of positive sanctuary, you are more resilient, you're stronger, you're more able to make great decisions, you're more able to meet the people, either right in your physical space or at distance, that you're connecting with, by being more present for them. And sometimes sanctuary, coming inside, is just a breath or two. And from that, you emerge nourished, rejuvenated, recharged, resilient. Sometimes it's longer. Maybe you take an afternoon of, or a weekend. Maybe this whole time for you right now can have the quality of sanctuary. But notice, as you're seeking that safety, that haven, what you're doing and how it's truly serving you. And again, no blame, no shame. We all have negative habits. The more you can notice them positively, the more you can notice them lovingly, and realize that your all the aspects of yourself are trying to help you, and that even the part that's going into negative habits is trying to help you feel safe. The more you can notice that and be kind and loving and notice how it's affecting you, the better choices you can make. So I also love to think of creating sanctuary in the habits that are creatively nurturing. So, what are you doing that creates a creative sanctuary for you? What kinds of things do you do that just let you feel creative and playful? They don't need to be necessarily productive, like you're producing something wonderful, but we can have that sanctuary of creativity. Maybe you draw. Maybe you just freeform journal. Maybe you finger paint. Maybe you go in the kitchen and you make something. You cook something. So creating the discipline around setting aside the time to just let yourself play creatively. What would that be for you? What would your time of creative play be? What would you enjoy doing with that? That can be a form of sanctuary that's very nourishing, rejuvenating, and refilling. So thinking of the way all of us are longing for sanctuary, whether we know it or not. We want to feel safe. We want to feel at one with that inner self. We want to feel peaceful. And we need to find the ways that actually help us get there. So noticing very kindly, what are you doing that's helping you, that's trying to help you feel safe? How's it working? What are your go-to habits of thinking, of self-care, of creativity? And how well are you expressing those? Are you giving yourself room for the ones that really nourish you? And what loving guidelines could you create to help your life become a sanctuary? One of the guidelines I was talking with actually a couple of clients in the last couple of weeks is, what do you do with that early morning time? What do you do when you first wake up? Now, some people say you should wake up at 4, you should wake up at 5. I'm naturally an early riser, but there really is nothing morally amazing about being an early riser. But whenever you do wake up, what do you do with that first time? What do you do with the time when you're first lying in bed? What are your thoughts? What are you focused on? What do you do in your first half hour or hour of your day? And also, what do you do at the end of the day before you're settling into sleep? The way you begin your day, the way you end your day, it's a really good place to look at loving, positive, creative self-discipline. What are you doing? What guidelines are you creating for yourself to help you be supported in creating the life you really want? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much. What do you think about creative self-discipline? What are you working with right now in this time to create sanctuary for your body, your mind, your creativity, your heart, your soul, and the people you love? Thanks so much.